Welcome to Turning Point. Turning Point is a series of interviews I'm conducting with a very few special people. People who had this major insight halfway through their professional journey and they were doing something and then they decided to do something else. So it's always fascinated me because I think it takes a lot of courage to give up what you're doing and what you're very good at and then to venture into something very new. This I've been following up for the last 20 years or so, and I used to look up to people who are able to do this successful change from one profession to another. Our guest this evening is Sanjeev Roy. He's a very good friend of mine, and we worked together in advertising very long time ago, in the early 90s. Sanjeev now is founder of Bullzi. He's a leadership coach, and he consults on organizational development, which I personally find very fascinating. So I thought, and he did this change from being an advertising guy to organizational development somewhere roughly halfway through his professional journey. I was actually unaware that he'd made this change, and I caught up with him recently, and we then became co-authors for the same book called Here Today, Here Tomorrow, which is a few short stories on how this pandemic might go forward. So I decided to make Sanjeev my first subject. Hi Sanjeev, thank you so much for agreeing to be on this show. You're my first guest.
Wonderful to be on this show, and thank you for the honor of being your first guest.
So Sanjay, we were both together in advertising in the early 90s. Where did that take you, and finally, where did it end for you?
So my advertising journey, it started in 1984 at Ogilvy, Kolkata. I happened to get into advertising by chance, but it was a good chance because it was a great party for a really long time after that. And Ogilvy brought me to Mumbai, and then I was with Trikaya Grey. And those days when every campaign was Trikaya Grey was an event. And as client servicing person, we had to wait, sometimes a month for a campaign to come, and you would get one option. There were no options. There was one campaign given, and you had to go and sell it. And if you didn't, then you went back into the loop of that whole month again. But it was a fabulous time to be in advertising in Trikaya Grey at that time. We did some really good, interesting work. And then I was sent to Bangalore to start the operations there, which was, I think, 89. Yeah. Pretty early in my career, actually. And I started the office there. And then I moved to JWT, HTA in Bangalore, which is where we met and we worked. And we had a party there, didn't we? And we also did some really great work. Then I came back to Kolkata in 96 with Euro RSCG. It was a startup then. I was one of the startup managers. I started the Kolkata office and moved to Delhi in 99. And 2004 is when I started Bullzi, and that's where the advertising journey ended.
What gave you this critical insight that maybe advertising is something that you should give up and take up something new? And I'm very interested in knowing why you became a leadership coach in particular.
I think, in 2004, matters really came to a head. And I had this 6-month notice period. And in that 6-month notice period, I did go around looking for other jobs, thinking that, maybe another agency, maybe another job would be great. And it would solve the problems. Like very often we think that changing a job itself is in the same profession is good enough. I went around looking for that. And this is, in hindsight, a lot of things become a lot clearer, right? I told you those last 4 years weren't the greatest of years. And it was during the time that Sangeeta, my wife, and me would often be talking about it. And she would keep saying that, you know, let's give this up. Let's go to the US. Let's do PhD together. I mean, it was an exciting idea, but when it came down to doing it, the thought of going and studying and doing that kind of rigor, couldn't get myself to do it. So again, it was something that was just a discussion, didn't happen. And she used to keep saying that what you really enjoy is teaching. So that's the kind of thing that you should be doing. I'd say yes, and nothing really happened. So in 2004, when matters came to a head and I had this 6-month period, I think I was in Bombay, ready to go for some interviews that had been set up in other advertising agencies. And I happened to be at a friend's place, and that's when all of it came together. And I said, I'm not going. This is because the idea of great agency, this, that, etc. It wasn't just exciting me at all. There was this sinking feeling inside that this is what I'm going to go back and do again. This is not what I want to do. So yes, it happened in Mumbai at that time, but it had been building up for a long time. I mean, that pile of sand had built up enough for it to break at that point in time.
So Sanjay, what is it about leadership coaching that really turns you on? And I mean, what is it in leadership coaching that advertising wasn't able to offer you?
So, I mean, to understand how I landed up at leadership coaching, I think I need to tell you a little bit about my journey of arriving there, because that will help explain this a lot better. So in 2004, when I left and I started, the idea was to do training and development, because that's something that I really enjoyed. Even in advertising, that's what I used to enjoy. And so when I decided to be on my own, that's the idea was to pursue what you wanted to do. And so training and development. And the first thing that I did is went to all my friends in advertising. And everybody gave me coffee, everybody gave me tea, but nobody gave me any assignments. So there was nothing happening in training and development. I went out and I started interning, once again, training with a very senior HR person, and I told him I'd work for him for free. So that was happening. I was doing stuff with him. But meanwhile, every day I would be looking at I used to do online banking then. I would look at my bank account on the computer, and every day you would see how it depleted, as if just by looking at it, things would change, but they didn't. And I think I used to mop around quite a bit. And my brother, my elder brother, who's my best friend, he happened to come and he saw me like this and he says, stop it. Why don't you, in the meanwhile, while all this is happening, why don't you go out and hire 100 trainers for us? We're looking for 100 trainers. For every trainer that you help us hire, we'll give you 6,000 rupees, 7,000, something of that sort. So it sounded like a really large sum of money. I said, okay, well, waiting for all this to happen, let's start. So Sangeeta and we started, and that's how Bullzi started. And we started work on trying to find people, search. When doing that, we got around to interviewing people and so on and so forth. We didn't place anybody in my brother's company, by the way. But it gave us the confidence to go and speak to our friends in advertising again and say that, okay, why don't you talk to us about the people that you need to hire? That people were willing to do. So they gave us that, and we started getting assignments. And in doing those assignments, what I found I was doing is that when I would meet prospective candidates, I really spent a lot of time with them, trying to understand them, where they came from, what they wanted to do. And the conversations landed up being more like counseling and mentoring conversations. What happened, of course, we placed quite a few people here and there. And what happened is in the process, people started to know about me and the work that I do. And word got around and people would tell other people in advertising that, hey, just go and speak with Sanjeev. He'll help you clear your head. And it became like that. So it wasn't always about placing people, but people would come to me for advice and counsel. And I used to really enjoy that process. The process of trying to work with people, helping them figure out, helping them to try and find, what is their what's their best version, what should they really be doing, fitting it in with what they were looking for in life. That's the part that I used to enjoy doing, and place people and money happen as a result. So this was going on. And while this was going on, I was doing a lot of reading. When you're on your own, the thing is that to keep your, what you miss from an organization is intellectual companionship. So I had to do a lot of reading, a lot of studying. I had decided that every year, 20 days I'd spend on learning something new, training, attending training programs myself. And there was this gentleman who was coming to India in 2006, a gentleman called Marshall Goldsmith, whose book I had read, who was considered one of the best coaches in the world. And so he was coming and running a course in ISB, a pretty long course. And I went and attended that. It was sort of very expensive, but I did it. And I learned, and I sort of became more resourceful about the work that I was doing. I said, okay, this is now, there's a process, there's a way of thinking about it, and so on and so forth, which is called executive coaching. So I came back, I spoke to people about it, and as luck would have it, somebody trusted me. And I got my first coaching assignment with a very senior person. And that person, after some time, actually, he quit his job and became my partner for some time. So very often I used to wonder whether I'm like a really good coach or where the companies will take me, because this is what happened. Anyway, jokes apart. So that happened, what got around, I was doing something else and coaching one after the other, various assignments happened, and I found that I was pretty good at it. People that I coached thought I was good at it, and they trusted me. I trusted them. It happened.
So Sanjay, what is it about leadership coaching that really turns you on? And I mean, what is it in leadership coaching that advertising wasn't able to offer you, for example?
So as a leadership coach, what I'm really doing is that I'm being able to bring all that's my real strengths to play. And also as a result, I mean, my passion is at play as well. I'm a very good listener. I can really put myself in the other person's shoes and see things from their perspective. That kind of helps me to understand the context for any person with whom I have a coaching relationship. And we are able to then work things out and see what needs to be done. And something is agreed, people do the stuff. And when they are able to really make a change, when there's this shift that happens and they're able to travel along a path, they've managed to change something, they've managed to figure something else out and go along that. And because you're working with leadership, the impact of all of this is huge. It's hugely satisfying. And, you know, my purpose I define today as helping people find the best in themselves. And that's really what I do. And that really gives me enormous joy. In advertising, it was different. In advertising, it was about campaigns that you did, billings that you got, awards that came along the way, and so on and so forth. And they were nice, but it's not the kind of joy and ecstasy that I enjoy with the work that I'm doing here. Well, advertising is not meant to do that. It's meant for something else. Whereas this is meant for this. And this, if you get your joy out of being able to make people change and grow and find the best in themselves, then, you know, this is the kind of thing to do. And that's really what I enjoy.
What would you tell people who have the secret yearning to do something else, but probably aren't able to cross that bridge?
Well, I have a lot of things to say to them. In fact, probably is it okay if I talk a little bit about some of the work that I do?
Of course. I mean, tell us a bit more about what you're doing.
I run this program called Reflections. As the name suggests, I mean, that's the kind of thing that people do there. So it's usually groups of entrepreneurs, founders, CEOs, senior people who come. And many of them have this whole thing where they're questioning about what is it that they're doing with their lives, and is this a good time to look at something else? So that program is designed for that. And what I tell people at that time, and that's what I would tell you, anybody who's yearning to do something else in their life, that by all means, go out and explore. Make sure that you have looked very carefully at what you want to do. Study, whether it's a hobby or whether it can be a profession. And there are ways of doing that. And I'm sure there are people who can help you figure that out. And then understand what it will take to make the change. Sometimes, like I said, it's an idea, and sometimes it takes time. It took me 4 years before I could move out, another 2 or 3 before I actually found what it is that I wanted to do. So doing this new thing, having a yearning for doing something else, it's a journey, and the journey itself is fun. You may find that you have to define your success differently. I mean, if you're used to defining success in terms of the size of your car and the bank balance and all that, it's great. And you may find that when you're looking for something like this, if you're yearning to do something else, and yes, it can give you a living, maybe, but not that kind of money. Are you willing to redefine success? Do you have your support system with you? Is your family with you? Are they part of the change? Because this is going to be change. It's a big change. It's very exciting. It's rejuvenating. As I told you, I've worked 20 years in advertising. This is my 16th year of doing this. So I've actually been working for 36 years. And I can spend 12 to 14 hours a day working right now. And that's because I was able to make the change. So if you want to, I mean.
So Sanjay, that's been a really great, insightful session. I want to thank you for being my first guest. Wish you well and wish you even more success. Thank you so much.
This was fun. Thank you very much. And good luck to Turning Point.